How's everyone doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Doing well. Happy New Year.
Amazing, baby. Man, no
Yeah, yeah.
complaints. No
Yeah, I know
complaints.
we're in the second week of January, but I mean, let's face it, nobody does any work the first week of January. Everyone's still waiting for the haze of all the holiday partying and festivities to wear off. So,
Probably why we had a couple of green market days in a row.
right, right. So, yep, here we are, first real week of the new year, and happy to have all of you on here. We're going to talk about the Healing REIT, more specifically, the Healing Real Estate Investment Trust, which you guys launched recently. So, the timing of it, fantastic, because we know there's a lot of activity happening here, in the psychedelic space. More specifically, we're seeing a lot of new ketamine clinics popping up, of course, Oregon and Colorado passing initiatives. So, with all that happening, the question becomes, are people who are actively seeking psychedelic assisted therapy going to be able to find clinics and practitioners that are going to be able to provide this specific type of healing and treatment? And while one may think that, taking an existing alternative health clinic and, integrating psychedelics might be as easy as one, two, three, not necessarily the case here. And so I would imagine that was part of the impetus of launching the Healing REIT. And so I'm going to start with you, Ty. You are the CEO and founder, background in real estate. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how real estate, has now sort of transitioned into something that you're merging psychedelics into here?
Yeah. So at Healing REIT, we're focused on the real estate side. So our goal is to buy and hold real estate properties that CROs, ketamine clinics, physicians that have existing clinics can basically come to us. We buy the real estate, we improve the real estate, we sign triple net leases with these companies, and then provide a bunch of support in the space as well with Cody and Dan's background. But like you mentioned, it's not that easy just to go find a space, sign up. There's a lot of red tape around the industry. So our goal is just to fill that void and be able to provide, safe, secure real estate locations for these practices and take that out of their hands so that they can focus on their business and growing their business and kind of help support them along the way.
Yeah, most definitely. And so, yeah, Daniel, obviously you've become one of the most, outspoken voices for psychedelics and psychedelic assisted healing, of course, sharing your own personal story. And so I would imagine, that has played a role here in your inspiration for wanting to get involved in this project. But, maybe help us understand, what opportunities do you see here in this project? Does it help in any way further some of the work you're involved in, of course, with Wesana Health? But more specifically, what inspired you to jump into this project here?
Absolutely. Aside from being involved with Cody over the years and building a great friendship and business relationship, as you know, with Wesana Health, we recently sold off the clinic side to our business. But while we were operating the two clinics and then built a third de novo style, we experienced some of the pains that Ty was describing, which is it took a lot of our efforts and obviously capital to build that de novo style. And if we had existing infrastructure that we could just move into with our patient base, it would have been much easier. So I think one of the things to really dumb it down for everybody is that traditionally with psychiatry and med management, you go into the doctor's office typically once to two times a year to get your prescription filled at Walgreens. And ketamine assisted therapy, MDMA assisted therapy, psilocybin assisted therapy, eventually when DMT comes online, this is experiential medicine. So you will actually go to a clinic with a prescription from a doctor and then experience the medicine within the clinic. Now, there's 55,000 psychiatrists out there. There's 15,000 practices. And a lot of them are just not set up properly for ketamine assisted therapy. And if they're not set up for ketamine assisted therapy, which is already FDA approved, they're most definitely not even close to being ready for MDMA, which the expected approval is supposed to come in 2024. So we saw that, not to mention, Oregon, Colorado, soon to be Illinois, with policy and creating these statewide medical programs. So there's a lot of opportunity. We think that we can help support physicians, ketamine physicians doing it properly, and then eventually MDMA, MAPS, and RIC with their therapists, just ensuring that they have the infrastructure to treat the patients.
Yeah, very good. And so I'm going to kick it over to you, Cody. It's no mistake, you're the money guy. We were talking, before we started recording here. This has been a project for you that's kind of been in the incubator for quite some time now. So curious, coming out of 2022, which was say the least, rough year for the psychedelic space, and especially companies operating publicly traded companies, which I can speak to from my own personal and professional experience, unfortunately. Nonetheless, curious to know, timing wise, why launch the Healing REIT now? And how optimistic are you that this is exactly the time to get something like this off the ground and running?
So, like you, obviously took a nice little whipping this year, last year, I guess.
A car bomb whooping.
These equities. So, the reason why this was the best time to launch is, listen, obviously cash is king. With interest rates being where they are, I think that there's going to be a tremendous opportunity to buy a lot of these properties for cash. So number one, it's going to be cheaper for the doctors to lease out these beautiful world-class facilities. And number two, let's be real honest, as the equity markets are kind of melting away, REITs are probably the safest investment. Forbes did an article a couple years ago. I'm trying to think if it was 2018 or 2019. The average annual return is 12%. The S&P versus that same time was 10%. JP Morgan just last year ranked REITs as probably the safest investment that you could possibly make, and healthcare REITs overall outperformed all of the other REIT subsectors for the last 3 years. Healthcare is by far and away the fastest growing segment. It's growing by 20%. It's going to exceed GDP by 1.5%, almost 2%. I think that right now, while the equity markets are hurting, companies still need to grow, clinicians still need to expand. This is the best way to get involved from both sides of the aisle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And so I'm going to ask an open-ended question here to whomever, wants to jump in and answer it, but, help folks out there understand. So if you've got a clinic right now that's maybe offering alternative health solutions, and they're interested in integrating psychedelic-assisted therapy, we'll say ketamine for now, into their practice, what specific challenges do they have to overcome in order to transform their clinic into one that is capable of offering ketamine-assisted therapy both safely, responsibly, and of course, effectively?
I'll take this bad boy. So, number one is again, that point that I made earlier, infrastructure, right? So with ketamine-assisted therapy, you want to ensure that you have a dark room. You want to ensure that there's, chairs. You want to ensure that, little things like there's no carpet, because people are getting pricked with off-use label of IV ketamine, which seems to work, have better efficacy than Spravato. There's the billing. There's the getting approval and ordering from the DEA. There are the wraparound codes that come along with if you are using ketamine in an off-label use form. You can have cash, but you want to do the best by your patients. So there's a lot of wraparound codes that you can use to ensure that you're subsidizing some of the treatment costs for patients. Mm-hmm. So there's also one of the things that we've come across is that clinicians just don't know how to administer milligram per kilogram amount, EMR systems. So really it's like opening up a new practice when you're thinking about bringing ketamine into a service line, marketing. And so what we've done is actually created a holistic management company to help with SOPs, manuals, ordering ketamine, infrastructure as far as floor plans, as well as adding in things like what we did when we owned the clinics and built third de novo style, is we added in TMS, which increases your margins from 15% to 30%, has amazing reimbursement, and really has great efficacy for people that are suffering from depression and other indications. So really what you get with coming into the ecosystem, as Ty mentioned in the beginning, is a lot of support, not only for the real estate and infrastructure, but also to ensure that your practice is at the not only cutting edge of mental health treatments, but profitable as well.
Yeah. So Holistic Management Corp. Yeah. Oh,
just to touch on that one thing, the marketing aspect, I think, is obviously huge. And that was something that was kind of touched on briefly. We did an exclusive data sharing agreement and also a marketing agreement with healingmaps.com. So now if a clinician, for example, wants to expand their practice to additional locations, we have a heat map that can specifically tell you, listen, this is the clinic density in the area. This is the searches that are being done in this area. Instead of going to an area that already has 30 other clinics, why don't we go 10, 15 miles up the road where there's one? Now you're competing less for patients. The data and the analytics side to helping these practices not only drive traffic, but also where they should be building these clinics, I think is a really unique moat that, a lot of, I guess, traditional REITs wouldn't offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was going to say. Aside from just the real estate component, there's the Holistic Management Corp, which Dan, you mentioned, that's the side that offers, some of the services that help assist clinicians, through the transition process. But then you're saying, Cody, also there's the data aspect of it. So this goes far beyond just real estate and identifying specific locations that are optimal for psychedelic assisted therapy. So you guys have seemed to cover a lot of different bases, right?
I think it's just about everything, buddy.
That's
what the last year of putting this together has accomplished. It's had a lot of time to think, talk to the smartest people in the room, doctors, other investors, fund managers. It's all kind of came together from everybody's input over the last year.
So what's the temperature out there in terms of existing clinics and clinicians that, are interested in transitioning into psychedelic assisted therapy?
I'll touch on it a little bit first, and then I'll let Dan kind of kick over too. So one of the most interesting things that's really occurred over the last 4 years that have been investing money into these companies, you talk to doctors that are outside of the space but are curious. So the exact same problem keeps coming up. Number one, my facility can't accommodate adding these new lines of therapy. And number two, I wouldn't know where to go and market this to drive patients. That's, I guess, probably the biggest thing that I've seen is a lot of the doctors that are curious about the space would immediately want to offer these services to their patients. Listen, they're watching all of the exact same things we are. They know exactly what the clinical results say, what the approved therapies are showing. They know it works and they want to, it's just they don't have the space to do so. So I think that this kind of removes the burden of having to figure this out on their own. The wheels kind of already rolling into motion. Now we can kind of help just push it along a little bit faster to get them moving, in the correct direction. And listen, to be honest, a lot of clinicians don't want to go out of pocket and go and remodel, a brand new building or go out and put money down. This removes that hurdle for them.
Yeah. And Dan, I mean, I would imagine, Dan, you've spoken with, many clinicians over the past couple of years. In speaking with them, what's their approach to, psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapies? Is it something that they're eager to want to incorporate? Is there any hesitation there? Because it is something that is so entirely new in terms of being able to integrate it into a clinical setting. I'm just wondering, what you've come across in your conversations with them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's over 320 functional neurologists, they're called. So they have a chiropractic background and a neurology background. And this is really where I kind of cut my teeth on the medical side, just being a patient and listening. And, a large chunk of them want to bring on ketamine. And then eventually when MDMA comes online, because of the cognitive benefits that they've seen through the research papers. So it's not only these new physicians that want to bring on like ketamine in these new service lines, but it's also like existing physicians that have ketamine practices already that want to increase their patient retention by adding in something like TMS, and then starting to, like McLean's does, tweak with these novel protocols, right, for depression by using ketamine and TMS. So there's a lot of interest, to be honest. for just one company to deal with it. I think there's going to be some other players that are going to come in, but you need to really go through owning and operating to really understand where the pain points are, both in the practice and then as it relates to marketing, as well as providers, bringing on other insurance providers. And luckily, this group, we've done it, right? I've done it. We've made mistakes. We've corrected mistakes. And we think we have a really good foundation to help this sector succeed. And I want to see it succeed. I think once you go to Cantor and you go to listen to, Numinous and Field Trip and everybody that's operating clinics right now, everybody says the same thing. Revitalists, they want to have 100 clinics. So this is really just a tool to help the sector and these physicians get there.
Yeah, I would say our end goal is just to help people that are helping others as quickly as possible. We all know that it works. We have friends that have done it. We have, personal experiences, and it really is changing people's lives, saving people's lives. And we want to be able to help facilitate literally helping and saving as many people as quickly as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. And so, Ty, from a real estate standpoint, I mean, at least here in the beginning stages, as you get this project really off the ground and running, is there any advantages, in terms of honing in on larger metropolitan cities versus, looking at areas that maybe might get overlooked? Are you focused in on any specific, cities or areas from a real estate standpoint right now?
Yeah, to start, we're looking at the top markets in the country. With the real estate correction that's happened over the last 9 months, with interest rates being high and everybody kind of sitting on the sidelines, we've been able to identify a bunch of properties that are below replacement cost, great value add. Not a lot of transactions are happening in the space right now. So what Cody alluded to before, we're going to be in all equity position to begin with. So be able to purchase these properties in cash, which will give us a great basis point buying power on the front end. And we're looking at insulated markets at the moment for our first transactions, like Beverly Hills, Miami, Chicago, Cherry Creek here in Denver. Just really A+ real estate locations that we can fortunately buy at a discount at this moment in time, just given where the real estate market is.
Yeah. And gentlemen, do you foresee, somewhere down the line, an opportunity to try to incorporate perhaps also, lower socioeconomic communities into this? I know right now, wanting to make sure that this gets started off, you've got to, build that solid foundation. But once you're in a better position, when we talk about accessibility, it's two ends here. There's one end, making sure that there's enough clinics out there and enough practitioners that are trained and able to provide this type of healing service, but then also accessibility from a cost standpoint. So I'm just curious to know whether there are any plans for, incorporating something from a price accessibility standpoint later down the line.
I'll jump in and then let Ty take over. Listen, I grew up from very humble beginnings. I probably know a lot of lower income families that would struggle with more mental health disorders than some of the better off families. So I think that expansion into those markets is probably going to be our number one priority towards the end of this year and early next year. I fully plan on bringing one to my community. I was very shocked to find out that Buffalo, New York has 2 ketamine centers for the entire city to use. It's really wild considering the size of the city. So yeah, again, a lot of blue collar families and working class people there. I think there's a reason why you see the density of clinics in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and New York and Los Angeles. It's a big goal of ours to make sure that patient access is the number one focus for this REIT.
Yeah, definitely. And with ketamine being FDA approved, have to go through your insurance company before, but a lot of these therapies are covered by insurance, and there's a lot of payment options that make it more feasible for families that can't pay out of pocket. So there's a lot of longevity there as well.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. And I mean, this is very, very exciting. Cody, congratulations. Because again, I know this has been a work in progress for you for quite some time.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
It's
So
all on the team, my friend, on the team. I think that this is probably the largest list of founders you'll ever see on a company to get started. I think we have like 30, maybe 35 founders for this company.
it's a great list, and I mean, it's a great project with a fantastic mission, and I think it's really going to help shape the landscape here of the growing psychedelic space. So I'm looking forward to continuing to follow the story. For anyone out there interested in more information, healing.realestate is the website. We'll make sure we get that linked here. But before we hop off, gentlemen, any closing comments? Any last things that anybody wants to share?
Listen, I'm excited about what this year brings, not only for just the psychedelic industry as a whole, but I think the economy, the market was rough last year. So I know a lot of people watching this are actively involved in investing. So just hold that faith. If you invest in the company at $4, you probably invested it at 4 cents. So don't be nervous. Have your convictions, follow that belief along.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got to have that faith and stick with it. So thank you all. I appreciate it. And we will definitely stay in touch.
Great. Thanks
Appreciate
so
it,
much.
David.
Thank you.
Thanks.